The golden glow of the setting sun drenched Ethan Carter's sleek office, painting it with hues of amber and gold. Long shadows stretched across the Manhattan skyline, their dance mirrored in the towering floor-to-ceiling windows. Ethan's reflection stared back at him as he adjusted his tie, for what felt like the 100th time. On his polished mahogany desk, the divorce papers lay like a silent judge, their weight mirroring the burden of the secret he had carried for the past 18 months. His chest tightened as he gazed at the documents. In just a few hours, his marriage to Mia Robinson, 10 years of dreams, laughter, and shared struggles, would officially be over. It was what he had convinced himself she deserved, what he believed he wanted. Yet the ache in his chest told a different story. A soft knock broke through his thoughts. He turned and there she stood, Mia. The light framed her figure in the doorway, her simple blue dress striking yet understated. Her expression was composed, but her dark eyes betrayed the storm within. Even now, with everything broken between them, she was breathtaking. "You're early," Ethan murmured, his voice softer than he intended. "And you're late," she replied, stepping into the room with the quiet confidence that had captivated him years ago. Her gaze lingered on him before drifting to the desk where the papers rested. "But then again, you've always been late when it mattered." He glanced at his watch. 7:22 p.m. She was right as always. Before he could respond, Mia crossed the room, the click of her heels echoing in the stillness. Her fingers grazed the edge of the papers, but her eyes never left his. "I have one last request," she said, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "Before we sign anything." Ethan studied her, wary. "One last request?" Mia nodded, stepping closer. "I want us to spend one final night together. No lawyers, no papers, no grievances. Just us. Remembering what we once were and maybe facing the truth." Her words struck him like a wave, leaving him momentarily unsteady. He searched her face, looking for the meaning behind her plea. "And if I say no?" he asked, masking the storm within him. "Then tomorrow we'll just be strangers signing papers," Mia replied, her tone gentle but resolute. "But we were more than that once. We owe it to ourselves to honor it." The words hung in the air, wrapping around him like a vice. Ethan exhaled slowly, the weight of her request sinking in. "Fine," he said, his voice firmer now. "But only on one condition: honesty. No secrets. No hiding. You have to know everything." For a moment, surprise flickered across her face. Then, slowly, a bittersweet smile touched her lips. "Everything," she repeated, extending her hand. He took it, the warmth of her touch stirring memories he thought he'd lost. "Where do we start?" he asked, his voice low. Mia's fingers tightened slightly, her eyes shimmering with something between hope and nostalgia. "First, we leave this office," she said, casting a pointed glance at the papers. "Then we remember how to be us, even if it's just for one night." Without another word, Ethan followed her, leaving the unsigned papers behind. He felt the weight of the night ahead, knowing it would change everything. The restaurant was small and intimate, a place they had frequented in the early days of their love. Candlelight flickered across their table, casting warm shadows that seemed to whisper of forgotten laughter and endless conversations. The air between them, however, was heavy with unspoken words. Mia smiled faintly as the server placed a slice of rich chocolate cake in front of her, her favorite dessert. "Do you remember this place?" she asked, her voice soft but laden with emotion. "Of course," Ethan replied, though his tone wavered under the weight of what he was holding back. Mia set her fork down, her hands trembling slightly as she looked at him. Her eyes bore into his, peeling away the layers of his carefully built walls. "Why did you change?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you push me away?" Her question cut deep. Ethan leaned back, drawing a shaky breath. "You want the truth?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," Mia said firmly, her gaze unwavering. He lowered his head, unable to face her. "I was diagnosed with cancer," he said, the words tumbling out like a dam breaking. The world seemed to pause. Mia's face froze, shock rippling across her features. "Cancer?" she echoed, her voice breaking. 18 months ago, Ethan admitted, his voice barely audible. "It's brain cancer. Stage 3. I didn't want you to go through the pain of losing someone else. After everything you've endured. I couldn't do that to you." Silence stretched between them, heavy and suffocating. When Mia finally spoke, her tone was sharp, cutting through the stillness. "You thought you were protecting me? By hiding this? By shutting me out?" Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her face. "You thought I'd leave you when you needed me the most?" "I didn't want to burden you," Ethan said quietly. "I thought," If you hated me, it would be easier for you to move on. Mia's tears fell freely, but her eyes blazed with anger and hurt. You didn't give me a choice, Ethan, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Love isn't about shielding each other from pain. It's about facing it together even when it feels unbearable. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. I need some air, she whispered, walking away, leaving Ethan alone with the weight of his confession. He found her moments later, standing in a small park nearby. The soft glow of streetlights cast a halo around her, making her look both fragile and unbreakable. As he approached, she turned to him, her face streaked with tears but her expression resolute. I didn't want you to suffer, he said, his voice breaking. And you didn't want me to choose, she replied, her tone firm. But I would have, Ethan. I would have chosen you. Every time. For a moment they stood in silence, the night enveloping them. And as Ethan reached for her hand, he felt the faintest flicker of hope amidst the ruins. The restaurant had always held a special place in their hearts, a sanctuary from the chaos of the world. Now the warmth of candlelight illuminated their table, casting flickering shadows that seemed to echo the laughter and love they once shared. The air, however, carried the weight of unspoken truths and lingering pain. Later, Mia stood by the stone railing of the park they used to visit in the early days of their relationship. The streetlights cast a soft glow, outlining her silhouette against the velvet night. She gazed out in silence, her figure motionless but her mind alive with thoughts that refused to settle. Ethan hesitated a few feet away, her coat draped over his arm. The cool evening breeze tugged at his shirt, but he barely noticed. Finally he approached her, his steps measured, his voice low and gentle. You'll catch a cold, he said, carefully slipping the coat over her shoulders. She didn't turn to look at him, her voice steady but tinged with bitterness. It's ironic, isn't it? You worry about me catching a cold, but you hid an illness that could have taken you away from me forever. Ethan swallowed hard, her words slicing through him. His throat felt tight as he tried to steady his breathing. I know, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. I was wrong, Mia. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want you to go through more pain. This time she turned to him, her dark eyes shimmering with unshed tears. Do you think I'm so fragile that I couldn't face this? She asked, stepping closer. Her voice was firm, almost fierce. You don't get it, Ethan. I lost my parents. I lost my brother. But the one thing I can't bear is you making all the decisions without giving me a choice. Her words knocked the breath out of him. I was scared, Ethan said, his voice breaking. Not of dying, but of making you watch it happen, of hurting you. Mia's gaze softened, though her tears continued to fall. Love isn't about protecting each other by hiding the truth, Ethan. It's about standing together in the storm and refusing to let go. If you thought I wasn't strong enough, then you were wrong. Ethan felt the walls he had so carefully constructed around himself crumble completely. He took a deep breath, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I don't need to forgive you, Mia replied, her tone resolute yet tender. I need us to fight this together. No more secrets, Ethan. You don't have to do this alone. 3 days later they sat side by side in the doctor's office. Mia's notebook rested on her lap, filled with carefully researched questions about his condition. Ethan glanced at her, the quiet strength in her posture filling him with gratitude. Her presence made the sterile environment feel a little less cold. Are you okay? She whispered, her voice soft yet steady. Ethan nodded, though his palms were damp with sweat. I'm better with you here, he admitted, for the first time feeling that he wasn't facing this battle alone. When Dr. Chen entered the room, her warm smile immediately set a reassuring tone. Ethan, Mia, it's good to see you both, she greeted, holding a folder in her hands. Let's review your progress. As the doctor explained the results, Mia's determination shone through. She asked questions Ethan had never thought to consider, her focus unwavering. He watched her in awe, marveling at her resilience. When she inquired about ways to improve his quality of life during treatment, he couldn't help but smile, a flicker of hope warming his chest. For the first time in months, the future didn't feel like an impossible wait. When they left the office, hand in hand, Ethan turned to her. I never thought I deserved you, he said softly. Mia stopped and looked at him, her expression gentle yet firm. You don't have to deserve me, Ethan. We just have to try for each other. In the days that followed, Mia became more than just a supportive presence. She became his anchor. Every morning, she woke earlier than usual to prepare carefully balanced meals to support his treatment. When the nausea and fatigue from chemotherapy became unbearable, she was always there, holding his hand, her voice a soothing balm for his restless mind. "You don't have to pretend you're fine with me," she would say softly whenever Ethan forced a smile to mask his discomfort. "Lean on me, Ethan. If you feel weak, I'll carry the strength for both of us." His strength waned as the days stretched on, the once manageable fatigue now leaving him confined to the couch for hours. His breaths were shallow, his hands trembling, yet in those quiet moments surrounded by her care, he often found his mind wandering back to happier times, the laughter they had shared by the lake, the warmth of her hand in his. One evening, as she gently placed a blanket over his lap, he reached for her hand. His voice was faint but steady. "Mia, there's one place I'd like to go. One last time." Evenings became their sanctuary. They would sit together on the couch, the soft glow of a lamp casting a warm light over the room. Mia often read aloud to him, her voice filling the silence with hope. One night, as she turned the page of a novel, Ethan broke the quiet. "I never thought I could feel peace during days like these," he confessed, his tone laced with wonder. "But you make me believe that we're still living, not just surviving." Mia smiled, squeezing his hand gently. "That's because we still have hope, Ethan. Even the smallest spark of hope can light up the darkest days." And so, through every challenge they fought together. Mia's unwavering care reminded Ethan that he was never alone. Each moment, whether joyful or painful, was a testament to the bond they shared, a bond that no illness or hardship could ever break. Together they faced the storm, refusing to let go of the love that had brought them this far. "Start over," Ethan said, his voice warm but laced with a faint tremor. Mia looked at him, surprise flickering across her face before a tender smile softened her features. "Start over?" she asked, her tone a mixture of curiosity and hope. Ethan opened the small velvet box in his hand, revealing two simple platinum bands. They were their original wedding rings, polished and resized. The metal caught the light, glinting like the memories they symbolized. "I thought it was time to put these back on," Ethan said, his voice steadying. "Not as a continuation of our old marriage, but as a symbol of the new one we're building." Mia's gaze fell to the rings, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice soft yet hesitant. "We're still figuring things out." Ethan smiled, a warmth spreading through him despite the fragility of his body. "I'm more than sure. 3 months ago you asked me for one last night. But you gave me more than that, you gave me a reason to fight, a future to hope for. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of it." Tears slipped down Mia's cheeks, but her smile grew. She held out her left hand, her fingers steady despite the emotions coursing through her. "I agree, Ethan," she whispered. "Today, tomorrow, and always." As Ethan slipped the ring onto her finger, they both felt the weight of the moment. It wasn't just a gesture, it was the beginning of a new chapter, one built on love, hope, and resilience. Time moved forward, but not without its struggles. Ethan grew weaker with each passing day. Every step became a challenge, every breath an effort. Yet through it all, he held one final wish close to his heart, to spend one last day with Mia at the lake where their love had blossomed. One crisp autumn morning, as the sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, Ethan watched Mia preparing tea. The light caught in her hair, casting a golden halo around her. His voice, soft but resolute, broke the silence. "Can you take me to the lake, just one more time?" Mia paused, her hand trembling slightly as she placed the kettle down. Worry flashed in her eyes, but she saw the quiet determination in his. "Of course, Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. By late afternoon they arrived at the lake. The water glimmered under the golden sunlight, and the trees stood cloaked in fiery hues of red and orange. Leaves drifted lazily on the surface, carried by the gentle current. The scene was serene yet tinged with an air of finality. Ethan sat on an old wooden bench, his breathing labored but steady as he took in the familiar beauty. Mia sat beside him, her hand gripping his tightly, as though letting go would mean losing him forever. "Mia," Ethan began, his voice frail but full of gratitude. "Thank you, for never giving up on me. Even when I tried to push you away, you stayed. You gave me more than I ever deserved." Mia smiled, though her tears flowed freely now. "I promised you, Ethan. Love isn't just about being together in the good days. It's about standing by each other through the worst." The lake stretched out before them, its calm surface reflecting the soft glow of the setting sun. Ethan's breaths grew slower, his shoulders slumping as he leaned back against the bench. Mia watched him quietly, her heart breaking with every passing second. She noticed the slight tremor in his hand, the way his once strong posture had softened into fragility. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling yet steady. "I'm here. You don't have to say anything more." Ethan turned his head slightly, resting it on her shoulder. A faint smile played on his lips as he murmured, "I love you, Mia. Thank you for everything." Mia felt his final breath leave him, his body growing still in her embrace. She didn't cry out, she simply held him close as though trying to freeze the moment in time. The sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow over their intertwined silhouettes. The gentle breeze carried with it the faint whispers of the lake, as if the world itself was mourning Ethan's passing. Leaves rustled softly, their vibrant colors fading into the twilight. Mia kissed the top of his head, her voice trembling with unspoken grief. "You'll always be my love," she whispered. As the first stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Mia closed her eyes, letting the memories of their love wash over her. She saw him laughing on their wedding day, felt the warmth of his hand as they danced under fairy lights, and heard his voice, steady and comforting, during their longest nights. Even in his absence, Ethan would remain with her, etched into every moment, every breath, every memory. The lake, now cloaked in twilight, stood as a silent witness to their love, a love that had endured through every storm and shone brightly, even in the face of the inevitable.